12 seconds. Think about it. It's barely enough time to tie your shoes. But on a cold, windy day back in 1903, those 12 seconds were enough to change, well, everything. Today, we're not just going to tell the story of the first flight. We're going to look at the blueprint for innovation that two brothers from Ohio created. So let's dive in and see how they pulled it off. And you know, this quote from Wilbur Wright himself, it just says it all, doesn't it? While pretty much everyone else was obsessed with building bigger, more powerful engines, the Wrights knew the real secret wasn't about brute force. It was about intellect, about method, and about skill. This idea right here gets to the absolute heart of their entire approach. For centuries, people were stuck on the ground, just dreaming of the sky. But by the time the 20th century rolled around, the problem of powered, controlled flight, it seemed completely unsolvable. And right at that moment, two very different ideas were about to go head-to-head. So at the time, you basically had two competing philosophies. On one side, you've got Samuel Langley. He's got a ton of funding from the government, and his whole idea is to just build an engine so powerful it can force a machine into the air. Then you have Wilbur and Orville, funding their entire dream with the profits from their little bicycle shop. They were focused on the real problem. How do you actually control the thing once it's up there? One approach ended in a very spectacular and public failure. The other one? Well, it changed history. It's honestly hard for us to imagine now, but the whole idea of people flying was basically a joke to most people. So the Wrights weren't just fighting against the laws of physics, they were fighting against a culture of total disbelief. They faced constant ridicule, and a lot of very smart people in the scientific community thought that heavier-than-air flight was just plain impossible. So how on earth did they overcome all that ridicule and crack the code? Well, it wasn't some lucky shot in the dark. Nope. It was a super methodical 4-year program of pure research, development, and just plain grit. Their process was just so methodical. It all started with a simple kite, just to test out their idea of wing warping, which is literally twisting the wings kind of like a bird does to steer. But get this, when their first gliders didn't fly right, they didn't scrap the design. They did something radical. They questioned the data that all the other top scientists were using. So they built their own wind tunnel, a totally revolutionary move, to get their own accurate numbers. And that research led directly to their 1902 glider, which was a huge success and proved they were finally on the right track. And their innovation didn't stop with the wings. When they couldn't find propellers that were efficient enough, they just invented them. See, instead of seeing them as just fancy fans, they had this amazing insight. A propeller is basically a wing that spins. Using their own wind tunnel data, they designed the very first truly efficient airplane propellers. I mean, what a masterful piece of engineering. And this, right here, was the single biggest reason the Wrights succeeded where everybody else failed. 3-axis control. It's this system that let them control pitch, roll, and yaw. So think of it like this. You can control up and down, you can tilt side to side, and you can turn left and right, all at the same time. For the first time ever, a pilot wasn't just a passenger holding on for dear life. They could actually fly the machine, steering it and keeping it balanced in the air. That right there was the secret sauce. That was the real breakthrough. So with the big problems of lift and control finally solved, all of their work, all those years of research, it all came down to one day on the windy dunes of Kill Devil Hills, North Carolina, December 17th, 1903. But you know what? It wasn't an instant success. Their very first attempt a few days earlier on December 14th actually failed. Wilbur pulled up too steeply, the plane stalled, and it got a little banged up. But 3 days later, they were ready to try again. At 10:35 in the morning, it was Orville's turn. And he did it. After that, they took turns, flight after flight, getting a better feel for it and pushing it just a little bit further each time. Just 12 seconds. That first flight covered a distance shorter than the wingspan of a modern Boeing 747. It was a tiny hop, really just a flicker in time, but it meant everything. It was the very first time in all of human history that a machine carrying a person had lifted off the ground with its own power,
flown forward under control, and then landed safely. And the most incredible part? We have proof. Before the flight, Orville actually set up his camera on a tripod, aimed it where he guessed the plane would lift off, and then asked a local volunteer, a guy named John T. Daniels, to squeeze the shutter bulb. Now, Daniels had apparently never even seen a camera before in his life, but he timed it perfectly, capturing one of the most famous and important photographs ever taken. So after they just made history, what do? The brothers walk over to the weather station to send a telegram to their father. And the contrast here is just amazing. You have this epic, world-changing moment, and then this totally understated, matter-of-fact telegram. And get this, the telegraph operator even messed it up a little, misspelling Orville's name and getting the flight times slightly wrong. Those 12 seconds were just the beginning. The Wrights didn't just invent an airplane. They lit the fuse on a revolution that was about to accelerate at an absolutely breathtaking pace. I mean, just listen to this progress. In 1903, their best flight was 852 feet. 2 years later, just 2 years, they were staying in the air for over 39 minutes at a time, covering almost 25 miles in a single flight. They went from a proof of concept to a truly practical flying machine in no time at all. And the world caught on fast. I mean, really fast. Within about a decade, their invention led to the first commercial airline, the first military airplanes in World War I, and it even became a key tool for the post office to speed up mail delivery. Aviation wasn't just a novelty anymore. It was quickly becoming essential. But the true legacy of that 12-second flight, it extends far, far beyond our own atmosphere. It actually drew a direct line from the sands of Kitty Hawk all the way to the surface of other worlds. You can literally draw a straight line from that first flight to the stars. That success led to the creation of NASA, the government agency for aeronautics research. Decades later, that same organization became the core of a new agency you might have heard of, NASA. And just 66 years after that first hop at Kitty Hawk, that lineage led to human footsteps on the moon. And this might be the most poetic part of the entire story. Pieces of the original 1903 Wright Flyer have become these treasured relics of exploration. Neil Armstrong, who was also from Ohio, carried a tiny piece of its propeller and wing fabric with him to the moon on Apollo 11. Other pieces have flown on the space shuttle. And most incredibly, a tiny swatch of fabric about the size of a postage stamp made the journey all the way to Mars. It all came full circle. 117 years after Orville and Wilbur proved powered flight was possible here on Earth, a tiny piece of their original aircraft was there for the first powered, controlled flight on another planet. And that flight took place in an area of Mars that NASA officially named Wright Brothers Field. The tribute and the journey were finally complete. Which leaves us with this question. The Wright brothers took an idea everyone laughed at, and through a methodical, brilliant process, they turned it into a reality that changed the world. And it all started with just 12 seconds. It really makes you wonder what breakthroughs are happening right now, in their own first 12 seconds, that will completely define the world a century from today.